All right. So 18 said a funhouse mirror distorts the image it reflects. Objects reflected in the mirror appear 1.3 repeating times taller. So when a 5-foot person looks into the mirror, how tall does he appear? Well, you know that it's got to be bigger than 5 feet, right? Because it's 1.3 times taller. Okay. So we're going to figure out first the fraction for 1.3 repeating. So how many decimal places are repeating? 1, right? So that's 10x, which means we're going to move the decimal point 1 spot over. So that's 13.3 repeating. And then we're going to subtract the original. So this becomes 9x when you subtract 10x minus x. And this is 12. So when you divide by 9, you get x equals 12 ninths, which reduces to 4/3 or 1 1/3. Probably for this, easier to do 4/3. All right, but now, does that answer the question? No, the question is, how tall does a person who is 5 feet tall appear to be? Well, we're going to take this 4/3 and we're going to multiply. We're going to multiply it by 5 because he's 1.3 repeating times taller. So when you do that, remember, whole numbers go into the numerator. So that's 20 over 3. How many times can 3 go into 20? 6. What's left over? So 2/3. So 6 2/3 feet tall is our answer for 18. So 6 feet and 2/3 of an inch tall, or 2/3 of a foot. Foot is 12 inches, right? So he's 6 foot, 8 inches tall. 8 inches tall. Pretty tall. How many people got that? All right. Now let's go back to 19. So 19 says, an exchange rate represents the value of one currency relative to another. So like if you come back from Canada or another country, right, depending on what the dollar is worth. So your friend visits a country that uses a local currency with an exchange rate of 1.265 repeating units of the local currency to $1. So it's more, right? So if a bank charges $2 to change the currency, how many units? So basically, how much money do they get if they give back $200? That's what we're looking for. And since this number is bigger than 1, right? We're talking about a number that should be bigger than 200. All right. So the first thing we got to do is we got to figure out what this fraction is. All right. Now, this problem is going to get ugly, so bear with me here and follow along. So here's what we're looking to do. How many digits are repeating? 2. So that's what? 100, right? So this is going to be 100x. And we move this 2 spots over. So that's 126.5, and then the 6.5 after. Right? Where we drop the decimal. 1, 2. Okay? Right there. So, and then we subtract the original. So this is 99x, and this is 125.3, because these guys kind of wipe themselves out, right? Well, we're going to have a decimal in there when we divide by 99. So again, what happens when we have a decimal? What has to happen? Yeah, we got to make it a whole number, right? And since it's in the tenths, if we multiply it by 10, we'll move it 1 decimal to the right. But we got to do the same thing to the denominator we do to the numerator, which is multiply by 10. And you get 1,253 over 990. All right, so that's just a fraction. We haven't answered anything yet. Well, remember, they charge you $2 to exchange the money. So if you have $200, you got to subtract 2 first. So basically, you got 198 left, right? And we're going to take that 198 and multiply it by this fraction. I told you it wasn't pretty. So 198 times 1,253 is 248,094 over 990. Now it just keeps getting uglier, right? Well, this is going to tell you the money though. When you take 248,094 divided by 990, you get 250.6 in the currency. That's what she's getting back. Anyone get that? That was a tough one. Good job, Justin. So you see how we found the fraction first? And we just had to figure out, well, they took away $2, so that kind of comes into play. And then you just take that number, multiply it by our fraction, which actually, if you look at this fraction is this decimal, and you multiply it by 198, and you'll find out what your currency is. All right, let's do 20. Let's go back to read the problem here. So 20 says, a low fuel warning appears when a particular car has that much of a tank of gas remaining. Okay, that's a very far decimal spot. 4 spots. That's what, 10 thousandths? Yeah. So a car holds 18 gallons of gas and can travel 36 miles for each gallon used. So how many miles can the car travel after the low fuel warning appears? So we have to figure out the miles. Okay. Well, to do that, once we get this decimal into a fraction, we got to figure out the gallons first. So we'll multiply that fraction times that, and then take that and multiply it by 36. Because eventually we got to get to miles, but we got to jump through a couple hoops to get to that. So let's go to that. So at number 20, this is what we're looking to solve, right? So how many numbers are repeating here? Actually, I'm sorry, it's not 4. It should be 6. It should be just the repeating part. Sorry. That. So how many numbers are repeating here? 1, right? That's 10x. And that means we only move it 1 spot over, right? So that's 0.0146 repeating. We're going to subtract the original. And when you do that with the help of your calculator, it is 0.132. Now, we could go through and get this into, 132 over 9,000, but use the calculator for your help. So take 0.132. We're going to kind of walk through this right now. 0.132 divided by 9, you get a decimal, right? You actually get that decimal, right? And now take this and convert it to a fraction. So just once you have that answer, just hit math 1 for convert to a fraction, and it gives you a fraction of, right, that's the simplified. Let the calculator simplify it for you, because 132 over 9,000, not fun to simplify, right? Let that do it for you. So we're down to that. So that's the fraction. Pretty tiny fraction, right? But we haven't answered anything yet. All we did was took this original decimal up here, and that's the fraction that it comes up to simplified. So to figure out the gallons of gas that is, we're going to take that 11 over 750 and multiply it by 18.5, because that's how many gallons of gas the tank has, right, on 1 mile. Miles per gallon, right? So when you multiply 11 times 18.5, you get 203.5 over 750. All right. And again, we can multiply each by 10 to move the decimal over. Okay. Now again, And to see if that's simplified, instead of going crazy trying to figure out numbers, take 2035 divided by 7,500. It gives you a decimal. Convert that to the fraction. And it simplifies it for you at 407 over 1,500. So basically, it took 5 out of each one. All right, so that tells you basically the gas. We got to know the miles, right? So here's the second hoop you're jumping through. We're going to take this fraction and multiply it by 36. And now we're going to get our answer. A lot of hoop jumping. So when you multiply 407 times 36, you get 14,652. And we're simply going to divide it over 1,500 because here's your miles per gallon, and you get 9.768 miles. And that is the answer. Did anyone get that? That's a tough one. So basically, almost just over 9 3/4 of a mile you would have to drive. You can drive before you're pushing a heavy piece of machinery. So don't drive that far. Nowadays, it's easy. The car just tells you how many miles you got left before you have to push the thing. Because by the time you figure that out, your car is going to be out of gas anyway. Or you rear end somebody because you're concentrating on your math instead of the road. All right, so that was that was 20. So this blue sheet, just like the pink one yesterday, we're on the back side at 9.4, so you can do your little self-evaluation. All right. Once you get that done, ladies and gentlemen, there's the homework for tonight. 5 problems. 22, 26, 27, 31, 33.